Hello, this is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work with another one of our Wolff Responds. And of course, hunkered down as I am, and I know most of you are, trying to stay safe, trying to stay healthy. Please bear with us if the conditions are less than optimal. We're doing as best we can to keep the communication going. I want to talk, of course, about the economics, particularly of the coronavirus pandemic we're living through. But I want to make sure that aspects of it that are not covered in the mass media or even in much of the critical non-mainstream media does get out. So let me focus on two or three aspects that strike me as particularly important. First, there is the question of what is being done by the federal government in the United States. For answer, let me be real clear. It's too little, it's too late, and it's fundamentally ineffective and unfair. If that's a harsh criticism, that's what it ought to be. Let's remember, the Federal Reserve has been pumping money into the system for a long time. Didn't solve the problem, didn't prevent the pandemic, didn't prevent the economic meltdown. The Federal Reserve has been cutting interest rates down to next to nothing. Same failure. Now we see, with the failure of monetary policy to really fix, let alone prevent, the collapse, we see a turn to fiscal policy. The U.S. Treasury, Republicans, Democrats, and President passing a bill in excess of $2 trillion to stimulate the economy. It's too little and it's too late. And you'll see that literally day by day. Why is it too little? Well, rather than explaining to you how big the problem is, let me do a historical comparison. In the 1930s, the last time we had a depression as serious as the one we are now entering, President Roosevelt under pressure from the unions, the CIO, two socialist parties, and a communist party that were all achieving record memberships at that time. Roosevelt did the following. Number one, he created the Social Security system. That's right, we never had that before. In the midst of a Great Depression, with many more people out of work than we have now, a government earning no money coming in because out of work people make no money, pay no income taxes, collapsed businesses likewise. What did the president do? Did he give everybody a check for $1,200 like the latest bill? No. In creating the Social Security, he gave every person 65 years of age or older a big check every month for the rest of their lives. But that was only one thing he did. Number two, he created the unemployment compensation system, which we had never had in America either. You lose your job for no fault of your own, the way 6 million people have as of the time I'm speaking, very early April. He created an unemployment compensation, giving those people a fat weekly check for a year or two. Then he went further to prevent employers who were doing this from cutting workers' wages by threatening, if you don't like it, leave. I got lots of unemployed people who take that job at half what I pay you. To prevent that from happening, they passed for the first time a minimum wage law. And here comes a big one. Roosevelt went on the radio and said, if the private sector of this economy either cannot or will not hire the millions of Americans who only ask for a job, not a handout, not charity, just a job. If the private sector can't or won't do it, I, as president, will. And between 1934 and 41, he created and filled, that's right, 15 million jobs, costing wild amounts of money. Bottom line, in that depression, the government was forced from below to massively help people at the bottom. You know, the vast majority comprising the middle and the bottom of the income distribution. Compare that to the miserly, small-minded, small amounts of money in the stimulus bill. $1,200, one-shot deal, $500 per child. You must be kidding. That's an insult to our intelligence, an insult to our history, and woefully inadequate, like everything else this government and this private capitalist system have done, failing to prepare for this virus, even though we know about viruses, failing to cope with it, and now failing in its economic policy. Throwing money at this crisis isn't going to solve things, because it's not first and foremost a money problem. It's an organizational problem. And here's the other big point. We have to reorganize the economy. We can't do business the way we did. It's too dangerous. There has to be 6 or more feet between people. That has to require a reorganization. We have to be very clean. We have to be very careful to kill this virus wherever we can. So what would it mean? I'm going to give you just quickly 2 examples. First of all, teaching. I'm a professor, so it comes to my mind. We have tens of millions of students. Daycare kids, little babies. Elementary school, secondary school, college, university. They can't meet in classes. We know that. The schools are all shut. Here's what we should have done. Here's what we should have planned for. Here's what we should be doing now. You switch from a classroom teaching structure to a tutorial structure. It's well known. 1 teacher, 1 student, 6 or 10 feet apart in a safe space, 1 or 2 hours a day. Take millions of the unemployed. Each of them knows something and can teach it, whatever he or she knows, whether it's typing or singing or making something in the wood shop. It doesn't matter. One-on-one, safe environment. We could do that. We should do that. Learning can continue, even if we have a pandemic. What about driving around, doing errands, driving trucks? We should have cars in depots, like in a rental car lot. There should be people who clean it with alcohol between every person who uses the car or the truck for any activity. Before they get into it, it's cleaned down. After they get out of it, it's cleaned down. We need millions of people to manage all of that. But then we could get lots of other things done that require stuff not happening now. But to do all of that, of course, you have to reorganize physically how the economy works. Businesses aren't doing it at all in most cases, or way too individually, and therefore way too partially and way too slowly. You need a massive program, the kind that can only be administered by the government. We don't have any other agency to do it. Whether it's in the school or in the car rental, I could give you more examples. But here's why we don't have that. Because we live in a society that has always given priority to a special interest group minority. They're called employers. They don't want the government to come in and reorganize their business because we might find that we don't ever want to go back. We want it to be done efficiently for the society as a whole, to cope with emergencies like a pandemic. We don't want private enterprise that just failed to prepare us for this one, failing now to cope with it. We want a different system. We want the workers in each workplace to run it so it's safe for them, the majority. And the capitalists, the employers, they know it. They don't want the solution because for them, like Mr. Trump said, it's worse than the disease. For them, but not for us. Last point. Mr. Trump was very wise. You might be surprised to hear me say it. Here was his wisdom the other day. He said, I don't want to shut the economy down. Remember, he was talking about we'll all be packed in church on Easter. We will all be going back to work and shop. And Americans were shocked. And when they were shocked, Mr. Trump, here comes his wisdom, said to us, well, we didn't shut down the automobile factories just because we have tens of thousands of people killed in auto accidents every year. And that's wisdom. He's absolutely right. We don't shut down our private automobile system, despite it kills 50, 60,000 of us every year. But of course we should have. We should have had long ago the system of efficient, rapid, frequent buses, jitneys, street railways, regular railways. We should have an adequate, clean, attractive public transportation system. It would pollute the air less. It would kill virtually none of us. It's much more efficient. And the only reason we haven't had it is because the private capitalist system can't cope with losing the profits. Trump was right. It's just like the current situation. They want the pandemic to run its course. 500,000 of us die. Well, it's sort of like the car accident. This is what happens when capitalism reaches its end, when private profit literally trumps the public's health.